Who even knows what the state of AI will be in a couple of years? Like, it's just progressing so quickly. The most phenomenal thing about AI is AI's ability to think creatively. The speed at which you could build products now is so phenomenal.
What is a controversial opinion that you have about the future of AI?
For companies who are AI native, I think one of the biggest data points we're already starting to see is
Thomas Vose is a bold founder reshaping recruitment through AI. As co-founder and CEO of HireAra, he scaled the platform to 3K plus daily users in just 2 years. Thomas is passionate about AI's impact on work, risk, and what makes founders tick.
and yet there's so much unemployment, there's so much poverty, there's so much inequality in society. And the AI is just such an inevitable advancement in societal wealth.
It's not necessarily about building AI products, it's about how AI is going to change the whole landscape for founders. I've tried to talk about things that I know are your favourite subjects.
AI is definitely my favourite.
What's controversially, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, what can we expect to see in that kind of sphere next, do you think?
I think one of the biggest data points we're already starting to see is...
Welcome to Founders Stories, where we delve into the journals of emerging and existing business pioneers. I'm Donna, founder of The Engine, and I'm joined by Tom Vose, a unique voice in the artificial intelligence space, known for bridging the gap between the complexities of technology and human interaction. So, who is Tom? You might genuinely not know, and that's fine. People might not actually know who you are, and they might just want to hear from another successful founder, which is really wise. But I do know you, and so do other people from a professional perspective. But I'm not sure they actually really know who you are in the nicest possible way. You kind of burst onto the scene in 2021? And at that time, you'd built a recruitment technology platform on AI. And, back then, I don't think staffing was that well known for being the best adopters of technology. And I actually think that the company that you launched, HireAra, really changed that and was really kind of monumental in that shift. And so it didn't surprise me when you first kind of burst onto the scene that you had probably a queue of investors lining up to invest in the company. And then, everything just escalated, and the next thing you know, you've got this amazing kind of acquisition story, which we'll dive into. But I'm really keen today to take that back a bit and see what happened kind of before that. So, Tom, welcome to Founders Stories. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me, and I've really enjoyed working with you over the years.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's, I guess, short and sweet, but I've always learned a lot from working with you, and it's great to be here today.
Thank you so much.
And to be on this podcast.
Thank you. So, yeah, like I say, you just kind of arrived from nowhere. What was your kind of history? What was your work history before? Did you have jobs? Where did you come from, Tom?
I think I've always been quite entrepreneurial as a person. I've always had quite a high appetite for risks. I think that the first business I ever founded was when I was 18 at uni, basically in my dorm bedroom with a bunch of mates. And we tried to launch HelloFresh a couple of years before HelloFresh actually launched. I think the thing we learned is it's incredibly expensive and you need a lot of capital to launch that. And we kind of pivoted over the years. It was kind of a hobby project with some mates kind of thing. But I think that really whetted my appetite for entrepreneurship. And I think my career, I kind of floated about a little bit after uni. I joined an aviation company, a big PLC, kind of had some fun building at scale, maybe didn't love big corporate life, and then joined another startup. And that startup was where we kind of discovered the idea for HireAra from.
Were your parents entrepreneurial? What was your childhood?
Not at all, actually. I think my parents are probably the opposite of entrepreneurial. They're both kind of very kind of middle civil servants. I remember my mum was a doctor and my dad worked in basically DEFRA, the environment agency, but kind of like probably I don't think you would describe my parents as risk takers. But I think if I kind of like reflect on my childhood, I think what my parents gave me was a very extremely comfortable safety net, which has always given me a massive opportunity to take risks, because I was always like, my risk equation in my head has always been, what's the absolute worst thing that happens in this business? The worst thing that happens is it fails. And I'm so lucky to have that safety net for my parents that if this business doesn't work out, the worst thing that happens is I move home and get a remote job and start again. So I think I've been incredibly fortunate to have that from my parents.
So interesting, and actually a really nice angle as well, with I think that if you delve into the kind of dark chord of a lot of founders' stories, what you tend to find is kind of early trauma, which can then trigger this kind of appetite for risk. So it's really nice to hear another angle from that and actually see that it was quite the opposite to you, and you just felt like you were in a safe place that enabled you to take risks. And on that, I've been looking into recently a kind of psychology around of entrepreneurship and the way that entrepreneurs are kind of wired, if you like. Do you believe that there is something different about the way that kind of business founders think to other people?
A really good question. I think there's an element of like kind of thinking about a problem with a kind of solution mindset which exists. So you see a problem and you think there's got to be a better way which does this. I think that's fairly common to entrepreneurs. But I also think there's an element of wanting to prove yourself. And to your point earlier, and I think I've always had that drive to prove myself, and that constant drive that is anything ever enough, and have you fully achieved everything you can achieve, or have you left everything on the table? And I think that they're probably two, like an inquisitive mindset, and then that constant drive to kind of never accept enough, really. And I think that I would like to think at least they're two traits that I see within myself.
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely saw that the first time I properly met you, where we were in we were both presenting in a room of founders, funnily enough. And, it was quite a scary place. Certainly for me, there was a lot of I was probably the only female in the room at the time. And, it was quite daunting. I just I just fell in love with you in that room, because you just got up, you just created, I think you were still I think you still had a prototype or something. The product wasn't even finished. And you were just absolutely relentless and not nervous. And
I certainly felt nervous at the time.
You couldn't tell. And you just kind of stood up and did your thing. And you could tell that, failure in that particular room was definitely not an option for you. I just wanted to kind of bottle whatever it was that you had and down it, because it was really amazing. And, the product was AI. And I know AI is a particular passion of yours. And where did that come from?
I actually did my dissertation at uni on the inevitable outcome of AI on kind of employment, and how basically, like, I think the welfare state and society just isn't really set up for a world of AI, which ultimately leads to a lot of job displacement. I basically argue for universal basic income on my dissertation at uni as an inevitable solution. Like, we live in the richest, wealthiest version of our society that we've ever lived in, and yet there's so much unemployment, there's so much poverty, there's so much inequality in society, and the AI is such an inevitable advancement in societal wealth that unless there's a much more aggressive, robust way of like redistributing the benefits of AI, and I think universal basic income is a very good way of doing that, society is only going to get worse and less equal and less fair. So that was kind of my entrance into AI from a kind of policy and from a kind of, I did politics at uni. So it's from a very kind of like theoretical background.
Right. Just kind of escalated from there. And I suppose anybody, particularly that's in recruitment, would want to know how you go from that use of AI to, I know what we'll do. We'll give recruiters a really cool way to present their candidates. Like, how did you manage to adapt what you learned to something completely different?
So the company that I was working for was a kind of automation, it was a management consultancy, more or less. And what that company called Digibly would do would be to go into big banks, really big PLCs, and shadow their team, shadow their processes, and just work out a better way of organizing process and technology. And we ran a project with Hydrogen PLC, a really big global recruiter from London, where I job shadowed a consultant for a couple of days, I think it was, from memory. And the part I ever came across CB formatting, the first time I ever came across it, I was job shadowing this recruiter, And I was wondering, what are you doing? Why are you spending so much time like changing formatting, logos, brand, like such a horrible process to dealing with crap PDF as a data item. And he described CV formatting as not the part of his job he hated the most, but actually the part of his life he hated the most. Wow. And I was just so...
There's your pain point.
There's your pain point, right? And I think my story is genuinely just one of absolute luck. I think, you have to be in the right place at the right time. You have to execute, but fundamentally my story is a story of luck. That I met that pain point, discovered that pain point by complete chance. And then the other part of that was we founded the business in April 2022, which was just as ChatGPT, or 6 months maybe before ChatGPT launched onto the scene. And then we found the pain point, which just happened to be a perfect use case for Gen AI. And we've just ridden that absolute kind of massive tidal wave, the massive wave of momentum from ChatGPT and generative AI.
Yeah. And I can't do this without letting you get rid on AI. So what's kind of like controversially, like whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, like what do you see, and not necessarily in the sphere that you're in, because I know that you network a lot outside of the recruitment space as well. Like what can we expect to see in that kind of sphere next, do you think?
I think one of the biggest data points that we're already starting to see is for companies who are AI native, it's the speed of which AI delivers revenue. It's the association between AI and revenue. So I mean, HireAra is a good example. If you look at all acquisitions in the rec tech space over the last 10-year period, you had, kind of going back 10 years, you had the likes of Volcanic, which would take maybe, I think there were about 7 or 8 years to get acquired. Then you had Vincere after that, which was then I think 5 or 6 years. Then you had, and just go direct to the acquisition tip mostly. And then you had Elay, which I think was 3 or 4 years old at the point of acquisition. If you look at HireAra, we were 2 years old, or just over 2 years old at the point of acquisition. I think that's an inevitable progression as companies build teams and the foundation becomes AI. You can just do so much more with less because you're entirely like an AI native. You're just an AI first company. I think what's happening now is you've had the first wave of AI native companies, not like I'm comparing HireAra to the likes of Cursor or Devon, some of these incredible Silicon Valley backed AI tools, but we've had this insane growth of Gen AI first tools. And I think now we're getting to the point where some of the more established, slightly old businesses are actually catching up on the AI front. And I think that will be the period where kind of like average people who are maybe not at the kind of cutting edge of not using the latest systems, most modern systems, really start to feel the benefits of AI. And I can see, for example, Access is a good example of this, the Access Group. The size of company that Access is, they're never going to be the first mover in AI just because of the fact it's a 9,000 person organization and corporates move slowly. But some of the AI offerings that the likes of Access are working on, based on the millions and millions of data points that the company has, it's just phenomenal. I think, that's probably the next wave of AI. AI just gets embedded in every single piece of software that you use. Yeah. I find that incredibly exciting.
And whilst we're talking about acquisition, let's double click on that for a second. Because I suppose that's great. If AI is enabling, these transactions, should we call them, to happen quicker, fantastic. But just going back to my original point, no one really got to know you as the CEO of HireAra. We were just getting used to you, where people were, that you had and still do have a fantastic reputation in the industry. But, we blinked and all of a sudden you're part of this huge corporate machine. How was that for you? How was that kind of journey for you? I'm sure that from obviously from the financial perspective, very, very exciting, and what most listeners of this podcast are probably hoping to achieve at some point. But, maybe not all roses either. So can you kind of talk us through that journey from, 1 minute you're running a really successful business, it's really cool, people love you, to, oh my goodness, this is actually happening now?
It's a good question. I think there's a perception that we sold too early, we gave up, or whatever that perception could be. But I was 27, and to be offered and basically a number, which means you never have to worry about money again for the rest of your life, and your family never need to worry about money again for the rest of your life. There's no possible way, even if I have a high risk taking appetite, I just couldn't do that to my family. The risk is just too high. And I think you've been through a similar process as well, and you've very much
my business, but I know the feeling.
Yeah, I had the scars of knowing that it is quite hard to move into an acquisitive company. There's ups and downs of new life post-acquisition. The parts which are incredibly exciting, just the speed that we're growing at now, that we're basically every month now since acquisition, we have equaled our best ever month pre-acquisition, and we're signing up, hundreds, thousands of new users every month. And then that growth is just so exciting. And, growth brings just insane amounts of learning for me personally. And, the scale, like we've basically accelerated our growth from being an early stage startup to a mature scale up and almost into the realm of like Series B, Series C company because of the speed of growth and because of the scale that comes from access. So I think there's definitely challenges, and there's a lot for me to learn in terms of politics and managing an organization of that size. But the pros are just the scale, the growth, and just personally like what I'm learning going through this process.
And what do you think of being kind of from a personal perspective? Because I can imagine, yes, I have been through a similar thing, but it wasn't my company, so I didn't have the I suppose the yin and the yang of the huge paycheck and I'm okay for money for the rest of my life, and family are okay and all of that, versus this is going to be a bit in places. That must have been a really kind of high versus low for you. What do you think? Talk to us about some of the darker days, or the times that you wondered whether you were doing the right thing, or what were the real kind of challenges that we didn't get to see because we were just, as you're saying, they've done it so early, so that, I think a lot of people would have assumed that you were happy about everything. So what do people not see?
I think the amount of work that goes into a deal under the scenes is just it's just exhausting. There's no other way to the diligence process for us. And we were a small business. We were completely by the book. There was nothing at all which was controversial, difficult to manage. But still, the sheer work that goes into it, that I think our diligence process was probably about 3 months. For probably at least 4 weeks of those 3 months, I was in the office 7 days a week, probably 14-hour days, just to cope with the sheer volume of data requests that we were getting. And because we were such a small team, from Access, there would be a lawyer, an external lawyer, a bunch of analysts, M&A people, all the separate then different workstream leads. Because we were a small company, and because I did most of the stuff myself, set up most things as a CEO, that was just so much I had to, the insane volume of work I had to get through. And I was incredibly fortunate to have a couple of people who really helped us to get through that deal. And I think I was so tired by the point of acquisition. I did celebrate it. I don't think I fully enjoyed and appreciated the actual moment and the sense of accomplishment because of the overriding emotion was exhaustion.
Yeah. And so just to kind of help any new founders that are now going through, they're building their businesses and ultimately, their goal is to go through a similar experience. Where are the skeletons? What should they watch out for? What can they be doing in their businesses today to make that process a little bit easier when hopefully it does come around for them?
I think 2 things that really helped us. One was that we got our ISO certification really early, and we inherited it from the company that we spun out of. So we had that on day one. And that just meant so much of our processes were the same as Access's processes. So the actual gap analysis on the diligence was really simple. Our software was built in an enterprise, robust kind of nature. We had always pen tested. We had always done the technical requirements of a much larger organization. And that meant when we got to the point of acquisition, our books were just incredibly clean. And I think the second point is this was a mistake, but when we started out, I was managing all of our finances, doing all the accounting. I didn't have an accountant on the basis that I wanted to learn about everything. I wanted to learn how a P&L works, how a balance sheet works, and I did that. However, I set up a bunch of our processes and financial admin not in a very good way. So then we brought in actually a friend. He's a friend, James Dawson. He's now actually set up his own kind of finance consulting business, actually help startups doing the same thing as well.
Shout out to James.
Shout out to James.
Yeah.
And he came in quite early on in the journey, and he basically told us to put our finger out and get everything set up for scale. And he was absolutely essential and incredibly helpful for us going through that deal process. Having someone who just understands a valuation model and EBIT models and projections and, you know, all the complex like M&A finance terms, having someone who understands the metrics from day one, I think also did help us out.
Which 99.9% of startups wouldn't have even thought about up until now. They may have an accountant, they may be a little bit, they might not have gone as crazy as you did and tried to do it themselves, but they wouldn't have that level of that layer of knowledge there. So yeah, that's a really good tip. What about people? I suppose with every all of this journey, there's been people along the way. You've never been alone. You're very lucky. You started the business with friends that you knew the guys before. So talk us through the kind of people journey of the company and how that's been impacted by, you know, from starting up right through to where you guys are now, and are they all still with you, etc.?
Yeah, I think we've been incredibly lucky on this front. That, for example, Adam, who's one of our co-founders, he heads our CS org now. I actually went to school with him, and I've known him since we were 10 years old.
Cool guy.
He's such a cool guy, yeah. And it just made the in those lonely kind of moments when I think as a founder you often don't have people you can rely on and trust. I had someone who was basically my brother, who I was able to kind of rely on and trust with 100% certainty that there is a support there and trust with execution. It's the same. It's not just the same with Tom. It's the same with Alex. We are the kind of two other co-founders as well. That just people who are just relentless and have that drive and have that commitment to never settling and never accepting something is enough. And I think we're all very similar in that mindset that we work extremely hard, work extremely well together. But I think at the same time, we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we have a laugh and we have a beer after work, and we have the ability to have like an outlet from the kind of inevitable stresses that come at work.
You throw each other in white water every now. Yeah. And so you get the call. You all working in, and I think anyone that knew HireAra prior to the acquisition, whether it was going to be your launch party or just knowing you guys and seeing you on the circuit, you can see you were an incredibly close team. I actually think it was one of the selling points. Yes, it's a great product. The product's got to deliver at the end of the day. It's a great product, but I think a lot of the initial attraction, a lot of your inbound will have been because you guys were so visible, and it was obvious that you had this great connection with each other. And I really bought into that, and I still do. Has that ever been put under strain by, things that have happened because it's happened so quickly? With any family or with any close relationship, sometimes if there is a huge change that's almost, put upon you, not everybody around the table goes at the same pace. Have you ever felt as though any of that has been put under any strain through the journey that you've been on?
Yeah, a lot of it is inevitable, right? That it was such a stressful thing to go through, that people respond to stress in different ways. But I think genuinely the challenges that we've had, there's never been anything which has been insurmountable. Maybe you have you have a tense moment in a meeting.
Yeah.
But that's where it ended, I think. And because we were all going through something in a very similar stage of our lives, in a very similar impact, I think we've always genuinely just had this similar view of everything. So whenever there's been a big controversial decision, I actually think every decision has been made unanimously. I don't think there's ever been a time of which we've had a fundamental disagreement.
Yeah.
And we're now probably 5 years in, since we first started working on this as an idea.
What is, if you have one, what is a controversial opinion that you have about the future of AI?
Yeah, interesting. I think agentic AI is kind of just marketing hype. I think a lot of the time, the execution which is delivered by agentic AI shouldn't need AI to execute on it. It should just be a lot of the use case. I mean, so many just marketing use cases here, but systems which are properly connected together is kind of how people are describing what agentic AI is. I think the most phenomenal thing about AI is AI's ability to like execute AI's ability to think and think creatively. And I think it's just AI plugged into different systems. I think agentic AI and some of the startups we see is approaching bubble territory. But the underlying concept of AI obviously is like the most phenomenal, probably without doubt, the biggest technological change we will ever live through in our career.
I agree. And I don't know as much anything like as much about AI as you do, but I do feel as though we're completely caught up in something right now that is, I feel quite fortunate to live through, because my children won't know any different. And they will laugh at a time when it wasn't a thing. Like we find it weird to think about the world without the web.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've actually started to notice in myself, that I now use AI for everything. Like my first reaction is to go to AI, and I am almost nervous of a world where I outsource my critical thought to AI. For example, if I have a decision to make, I will often put the decision into ChatGPT, into AI. I will ask it to give me a bunch of different scenarios, and then I will form my opinion off the back of the scenarios it gives me. And sometimes I don't know, it's just maybe a thought in the back of my head, probably not AI generated. It's whether or not, as this becomes more common over time, where we basically outsource our thinking to AI, and then the way that humans think is kind of like the one thing that separates us from animals. So there's definitely a fine line to be crossed between using AI as a tool to leverage and to like 4x your brain, and then becoming dependent on it to do actually anything, any form of critical thought.
I'm so glad I asked you that question, because that was an amazing answer. And I love that. That's so good. And maybe you should A/B test that. Maybe you should kind of, half of your decisions you should reach out GPT, and the other half you're not allowed to touch your phone or any device, and just see what happens with the results, see whether you make better decisions on your own.
The thing is that I think the divide is like short-term versus long-term. That the short-term decisions of AI are fundamentally better than decisions that I can make on my own, because its ability to process so much data and information and to get so deep into different scenarios of what if this happens, then how do you respond to this scenario? It's bigger, like the context window is bigger than my own brain. But then so the short term, massive benefit of AI, but then the long term, like what's the impact of not challenging your brain enough? And do we get to a point where actually human intelligence, kind of like the social media TikTok generation, where our attention span is so short because we're used to 6-second videos, which you can now speed up if you hold down Reels and Instagram. So our attention span has objectively become shorter because of technology. And then what happens if our ability for creative thinking also shrinks in the same way our attention span has, because we just become dependent on AI?
I think the original question of like who you are, I've not had to do this with really cheesy podcasting where we talk too much about, your childhood, your school, like all the bad things that happened to you, any relationships that you've been through. I think we're really getting to it now, because we can, as soon as you start talking about this stuff, you can actually see that is how you have that like level of systems intelligence, that it is who you are really. And I suppose whatever you go on to do will always have that at the very core. So obviously having a wonderful time in your new role and your big shot role, traveling the world with access. But without giving too much away, do you have any idea around, you're still so young, like what's next for you?
Well, I'm at Access for a couple of years, and I will learn as much as I can from those next few years, and I will try and soak up every piece of information I receive. And then I think I think once you're a founder, you're probably always a founder.
Thank God.
And I have no idea. I mean, who even knows what the state of AI will be in a couple of years? Like, it's just progressing so quickly. I just spent a week with some friends last week over the long weekend, and we could basically just spend the whole time vibe coding. But like the speed at which you can build products now is so phenomenal, and you can just basically prompt into an AI window and it can generate an entire working prototype of a product. I have no idea where we'll be in like 3 years time, but maybe even the concept of like small startups won't even be such a thing anymore, because there'll be these like massive overarching generalist models which can just do everything. I have no idea, but I think it will be, I don't think I will be in the corporate world forever.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, you've definitely, the reason why you sat in the couch is because I actually believe, by the way, I asked you the question, and I think we agree that founders are wired slightly differently. I'm new to the founder journey myself, and I'm starting to realize that this is who I've been all along, and that's why I've maybe felt a little bit like the wrong piece of cutlery in the drawer. So I agree with you. I think that it would be you kind of got those two elements. Yes, you are very passionate and knowledgeable about AI, but you're also a founder, and once a founder, always a founder. Who are the ones to watch? Like, who are you got your eye on at the moment? Like, who should be on my show?
In the red tech space?
Not necessarily. Like, who's doing some really cool stuff right now? Have you got any favourite products?
There's a couple of products that I'm most in the rag tech space. I think already similar industries. Cam from Venti.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Cam as well. Yeah, I think they're working on some really cool, basically like really niche AI use cases, which is especially in the same industry as our same sector of like helping to prioritize BD leads for recruiters using some deep AI tech. I think that's quite cool.
Yeah.
So I could ask them like, I mean, you've been through a similar journey as me as well, being an employee who then goes into an acquired company and having to work on that transitionalness, thinking like a founder, and having to deal with that. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was really tough. I always think that, and going back to kind of lessons and risk evaluation and that kind of thing, you never really know whether what you're going through is good or bad. And at the time, there was obviously highs and lows, like yourself. Retrospectively, looking back at what the bad bits of that I thought I was getting drowned into this corporate machine that was all about, sales and money, and less about products and people, which was where my real passion was. Actually, looking back, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now had I not had that experience. I wouldn't have been able to work with you guys and pass on my kind of, experience to you to try and help you and your CRO through the same situation. So the things that, you are going through something that's a big transition and it feels like not natural, or it feels like maybe a negative situation, just know that actually what you going through could be the thing that's going to enable you to do all the things that you've ever wanted to do. So I wouldn't be able to have started my own business had I not been through that. So I think that, that it's a bit of a cliche, go with the flow, ride the wave, whatever you want to say. But I think it's just important to give yourself some thinking time and give yourself some reflection time. Is when you're, as going through the due deal and everything, when you're in something, it's just go, 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 go. You don't come up for air. You are totally engulfed in the situation. Take a little bit of a step back and think, actually, what could this do? What could this mean for me later on? And, the engine was born out of me having a real contrast of experience from working in scrappy startups, going through an acquisition, and then being very successful in a bigger environment as well. I was able to then put all of those elements together and start a business off the back of that. So yeah, very grateful really.
And what I really enjoyed and learned from working with you, I think, was the fresh perspective and the ability to give me a fresh perspective when I've been completely stuck in detail, really.
Yeah.
And a mantra of picking your battles and seeing the bigger picture, I think, has been a massive takeaway I had from our time working together as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely saw some things coming, and actually, you seem more chilled now than probably I've ever known. You seem to have very much kind of found, you seem to have found your flow. You don't have that, I suppose, when you're in a startup, and especially when you've got mouths to feed in terms of not necessarily children, but people, when you've got a team, every deal is so, so important, and every decision is going to either make or break you. And you live with that chip on your shoulder constantly. You live with that fear. Now, most founders that I know, including you and including me, absolutely get off on that fear, and we absolutely love it. And that's what drives us every single day. But it is really, really hard and can be quite draining as well. You don't take any time out for yourself. You worry that if you go on holiday for a week, the world's going to come crashing down. So, actually going through that and then, taking a bit of distance and having some perspective, and somebody just, I said to you at the time, I wish I would have had me back then going, this isn't a thing. this is not a problem. This is going to be fine. I think it would be really helpful to me. So I was just really, really honoured and happy to kind of hop on and be there through the journey and get to know you guys a little bit better and go rafting with you. It was cool.
Yeah, for sure. That was a good trip. And Tom, our CRO as well, just learned so much from working with you, how to manage pipeline, how to, manage a team, how to implement proper comp plan and targets. And really it gave us, Tom was a first time CRO.
Yeah.
An exceptionally personable person, very, very good with customers, extremely charismatic, extremely customer orientated.
Yeah.
But working with you, I think just really gave him that kind of sales nous and that sales experience, which really set the foundations for our which
was really good at it. I just needed to unlock a beast. It was honestly like with a lot of my clients that I work with now, there's nothing there for me to work with. I have to start with a blank canvas and almost turn them into having like a sales brain or the way that they act. But, with Tom, it was just a case of unlocking. And the great thing about Tom is that he is a CRO he's intelligent, he's got a great personality, but he's also got the sales drive as well, which is just such a winning combination. You've got to be easy to buy from. We've got to be easy to buy from. And if you're too on the numbers, too on the data, always thinking about sales methodology, you just become annoying and frustrating to a buyer. So he manages to take all of that, and because he's so intelligent, he manages to take all of that and use it correctly, but still be like super personable and easy to buy from. So it's been great to see that all I needed to do was add in the easy stuff. It's really hard to teach people how to be a good person, but it's dead easy to teach them how to be a great salesperson as long as they've got the key kind of ingredients.
He's just inherently a good person at heart, I think, when then everything else comes after that.
Tom with Uptime.
Yeah.
Now, give me a million talks every day. And, sometimes when I buy products, I think about Tom and think about how I want to come across as a seller. I'm still a seller at heart, and I'm still always going to be on the tools, as it were. And, when I come across people that sell products, and I just can't wait to my next demo with them, or I really want to buy their product. And it's usually because I just enjoy spending time with them. And obviously, if the product is no good, then we tell them and they walk away. But there's nothing worse. It's nothing worse than seeing a great product with an arse of a salesperson, because you're like, I don't actually want to buy this from you right now. So yeah, there aren't many, I'd say, really fantastic, rounded sellers out there that have that combination of selling with kindness and really knowing their shit. That is just such a winning combination. And yeah, that's for my founders. When they're a little bit of a pickle about what do they do next, do they hire a sales team? Do they go out for a CRO or whatever? And one of the mistakes I see them make more often than not is that they hired not very good sellers. I don't know whether they're trying to save money, or they don't know what they're looking for, or they don't ask the right questions at interview. But what they end up with is people who do not have those elements. I would say to founders, get yourself those mini Tom cars who have just got that beautiful manner about them, who people want to buy from, because then if you give them the right product, they will fly. They will just fly. Yeah.
And I see a lot of everything that you said about Tom. I think that applies to you as well.
I think we are similar in that way. We definitely share the same values. We have no interest in ripping anybody off, or, we don't have this kind of hero thing where we're hitting quota and that kind of thing. But give us a good product and it will fly off the shelf. So I think we've both got that. And it was really interesting to see Tom kind of, grow with the team and, have more structure to the team, and hopefully the team have benefited from that. And, I work fractionally now as a CRO, so going for lots of different companies. And usually, if they are genuinely good sellers and there's a good product, often all you've got to do is sprinkle across a little bit of process, like we did with Tom, and everything just sits into place. Where there is sometimes a disconnect is, salespeople trying to sell product that hasn't got product market fit. It's not, the timing is wrong, it's in decline, whatever, but that's obviously a different problem. I think if you have good people, good product, and the right process, you've got a winning formula. And it doesn't surprise me when you say that you guys are now, backing up the deals, because you have all of those elements within your sales team, which is really great. So, are you guys kind of hiring now? Are you looking to grow the team some more now?
Yeah, so the team will triple, and it's already doubled since acquisition, and it will triple again. Wow. Which will double again into the next couple of years. We're not on a massive salesperson hiring spree. A lot of our investments into acquisitions go into the product, engineering, and customer functions, and we can benefit from a lot of the kind of we have a really strong inbound engine, so it's as much on the kind of letting the product sell itself and having kind of product-led sales strategy, I think. And I hope that our customers are already feeling the benefits of that investment going into the product, the professionalism, the rounding, and we're on the brink of, I think, some really, really exciting new features, which I think I'm probably the most excited about what we're working on than I've ever been. I think we've gone slowly for a couple of weeks because we're working on some really big stuff.
So I look forward to research. I look forward to seeing it coming out. It's interesting when I go into companies that are, so my kind of ICP is founder-led sales, and they kind of hit a bit of a brick wall and don't know where to go next. And I think they come with this assumption that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and say, right, okay, we're going to hire 5 or 6 salespeople. Well, the first thing that I do is spend a few weeks looking at the products, because I'm a big product-led sales person. I'm very much kind of, we've got to get that element right. And actually, before we put a bum on a seat and hire anybody, we need to know that they're going to be able to sell it. So it's something that I always do. And it's a really interesting journey, because particularly if the founder has come from product background as well, it helps me spend a lot of time with them, really understand kind of where they want to take the product. Where it's a little bit more difficult is when they come from a sales background, because they're like, we want the money and we want it now. But yeah, it's a definitely a good approach to just take a step back. I think it's quite an old-fashioned approach to just throw salespeople at the problem. It's like, oh, we're not making any money, let's hire 20 sales guys and then we'll make money. It's I think that's quite a dated approach to go to market. I think get the product right and 2 or 3 really, really good sellers, and you'll get there.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Okay, so Tom, I hope you don't feel like I've grilled you too much. I've tried to talk about the things that I know are your favourite subjects.
AI is definitely my favourite.
AI is your favourite subject. We have gone absolutely down an AI rabbit hole today. That's fine, because I knew that's what's going to get you talking. And I'm sure that, it's not necessarily about building AI products. It's about how AI is going to change the whole landscape for founders, what they need to be doing, what they need to be aware of if they're looking to be acquired. There's just so much in there. So let's finish on some words of wisdom from your, 29 years on the planet.
I think maybe this is a message to anyone thinking of starting a business. I think you have to view it in the context of risk and the average risk profile. It sounds technical, but it's not. If you start a business, if you make the decision to take that risk, what is the absolute best thing that could happen? What is the best case? Okay, you run it for a couple of years and you sell it. It's probably the best case for most kind of tech startups. What's the worst case that happens? Maybe you'll exhaust your savings. Potentially you have to move home if you're lucky enough. Obviously not everyone has that luck. But potentially the worst case is you give it a go, it fails, you go back and get a job. And then when you average out the 2 versions of that scenario, the average outcome is so high and the worst case is not that bad. That I think that's a framework if I look at taking risks on, and I think it's basically a message: quit your job and start the business.
Yeah, just Drew, I can pass on Tom's details to anybody. So I think if they want to come after you, if that doesn't work out. No, I absolutely agree. And, working in recruitment for such a long time as I did as well, what I can say is that candidates for senior roles that have been through that journey, have started their own business, have got really good stories of failure. Everyone loves vulnerability, and actually, trying something, being the one who stands up and goes, I'll do it, I'll give it a go, oh crap, didn't work, is actually a really endearing trait in somebody, and something that I personally find super, super attractive. I have no issue with any of my sales guys having side hustles. or anything like that. I think it's a very, very attractive trait in somebody to them to be the ones that are actually willing to give it a go. So very, very good advice there, Tom. And thank you so much for talking to me today. And yeah, we'll see you around on the next venture, whatever that might be.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking.
Thank you so much.